At the University of Lincoln, we recognise that change is coming, and we're preparing our students to lead that change. That means a great student experience underpinned by world-class research. With our students, we're solving global challenges in fields like health, energy, agriculture and climate. So come to an open day and be the change.
Good afternoon and welcome to our Budgeting Bootcamp this afternoon. I am joined by Lucy and Tallulah, who are both students here at the University of Lincoln, and they are going to share with you their budgeting tips as a student. As you know, student finance opened last Monday, so you can apply for your student finance from any time now, right up until the 20th of May. So long as you apply by the 20th of May, then you will guarantee that your funds are in place at the university when you start in September. That's sort of the main thing that you need to worry about. What we're going to worry about is how your maintenance loan, how you can spend your maintenance loan really. And I'm using the wealth of knowledge that I've got with me by two current students today. What I want you to do is say hi. Please use the comments, the questions, use that, ask your questions. So anything that you're not quite sure about, you're sort of unsure what you will pay for when you come as a student, then please ask us the question. We're desperate for you to have as much knowledge as you can have. And so use that time. So say hi, tell us where you're watching from this afternoon, and also ask us what you want to know. So what the very basics are that you will apply. Hi, Joshua. Nice to see you. As you will know, you can apply, as I've said, to Student Loans Company, and all you need to do is put in your details in there, and you will be entitled. Everybody's entitled to a tuition fee loan. Everybody is entitled to that. You are also all entitled to a maintenance loan. However, the sliding scale of that maintenance loan will vary. So your budgeting may vary depending on what you get. What we can also advise you to do is look onto university websites. So look onto the University of Lincoln website and see if there are any scholarships or bursaries. And Tallulah, very, very welcoming this afternoon, has just told us about something that I didn't know about, which is called the Scholarship Hub. The Scholarship Hub gives you a whole host of different places that you can look to see if there is extra money out there. The most important thing that I need to sort of share with you is a scholarship or bursary is something that you don't pay back. So it is what we will talk about in the next sort of 20-30 minutes is about freebies. And every student loves a bit of a freebie, and that's just sort of my first top tip for you. Without further ado, I'm going to sort of just introduce my two guests today. So Lucy, I'm going to invite you first because you're in the top corner. If you want to tell us where you're from, where you came from to Lincoln, and what course you're currently doing, really.
Hi, so I'm originally from Corby in Northamptonshire. And before I came to university, I went to a college in my hometown. I'm now a fourth year student, so I've been here for 4 years and now doing my master's in zoology. And I took my undergrad in zoology here as well, and I loved it so much that I decided to stay for a bit longer.
Fabulous. Tallulah, where are you from? What are you doing?
Hi, so I'm Tallulah, and I'm actually from Lincoln. I went to school in Lincoln and did sixth form in Lincoln. I'm doing a master's in cloud computing, and I did my undergraduate here as well in games computing. So I've also been here a while and love taking advantage of the student discounts and whatnot.
Absolutely. So tell us, when you first arrived, obviously you're both master's students, so you're loving the student life obviously so much. So one of the positives must be that you've been able to afford to live as a student. So some of the myths around always been in debt, never having any money as a student, actually you've both managed to get beyond that. You know, you are both managing fine. So what we really want to know is how you manage your money. Now, I secretly know that both of you have part-time jobs. So as Lucy, do you want to just share with us, I know when we were chatting the other day, you talked about having a summer job before you came to university. So that's sort of one of the options that students could look at, isn't it?
Yeah, so throughout my time at uni, I've had a couple of different jobs. So when I first came to the uni, I worked for the university for my accommodation that I was staying in, which was really, really great. I really enjoyed the work, which really helped as well, but really helped with budgeting, so I knew that I had sort of some money coming in. I then started working in the summer, just having a summer job, having some time off as well, making sure I recharged before I came back, but just spending a good few weeks in the summer, just getting some money in, saving up so that when I came back, I had some money to sort of work with, as well as my loan, which I found really useful. And yeah, obviously now I'm working with the university again. And again, I'm really enjoying it, really loving it. And it just helps a little bit. And I think obviously money is something that people can worry about, especially young people, especially if you haven't sort of had a lot of money that you've had to take charge of before. And I think it can take a bit of that anxiety away, knowing that you are going to get money coming in for something that you're working hard for as well.
Absolutely. Tallulah, what sort of tips do you have about sort of part-time jobs, really?
Yeah, so when I first started in first year and second year, I had a part-time job at the local WH Smiths, and it was really reassuring to have just a regular income for things that you might not think about. So things like phone bill, you know, any other direct debits and things like that. It was just really handy to know that that was taken care of. It alleviated like a lot of the stress of, oh, how am I going to pay for this contract next month? So that was great. And then in third year, I really wanted to take time to focus on my portfolio and dissertation, all my university projects. So actually I decided I was going to be really strict with my budgeting and not have a job, which was fine. I managed, and it was great. And then in the summer I got a summer job to kind of make up for not having a job.
Yeah, exactly. So a real nice mix of jobs, which I think is really good to know. And then Rosie's asked a question. Thank you, Rosie, and hi. What sort of jobs do the university have for students? Now, that is a really good point, and something that I think you know, you sometimes forget when you come, that actually the whole excitement and adrenaline of coming to university, and actually a little bit further down the line, you think, oh, I could really do with some cash and a part-time job. Now, our career service are amazing. So they have a amazing sort of what we call campus jobs, and it is a portal really of jobs for students. So there are definitely students, both of you are both on enrolled as such with campus jobs, aren't you? And are both our student ambassadors. Now, that range of work is massive and very flexible to work. We have sort of jobs in the Students' Union, and I don't know if both of you, have you got any examples of friends or fellow students that have worked for the universities but different sort of jobs?
Yeah, so quite a few of my friends, quite a few of my friends have worked for the university over the years. One of my friends was really interested in bar work, so went to the university, went to the SU, and managed to get some bar work experience, which has been really helpful for him getting lots of other jobs as well. And I have some other friends that are also student ambassadors, or work for their colleges or for their accommodations. There's a whole range of jobs.
at the university. And I personally have found that the university is a really, really great employer, and I really like working with them. But yeah, there's loads for different people for sort of looking at what you want to do. But also, if you know that you want a job in the future, there's definitely going to be a job that you can get that will give you some type of experience for that, which I think is really good.
Absolutely. And I think one of the really key questions about being a student ambassador, which both of you are, is the question that we have here about what advice do you have for getting a job that doesn't negatively impact your studies? And that is sort of the beauty. I think, Tallulah, you sort of mentioned about having a job at WH Smith's, and that's sort of a regular job that you can't dip in or dip out if you've got a real heavy assignments sort of load or exam period, isn't it? So do you want to explain sort of how we work the sort of student ambassador system?
Yeah, sure. So obviously WH Smith was outside of the university, so it was just your kind of standard contracted hours. But working for the uni has been really great because you pick up the shifts as and when you want them. So for example, if I have a week where I know I have loads of assignment hand-ins or I have an exam, then I don't have to pick up a shift that week. I can leave it and I can prioritize revision or my assignment. So that's one of the really good things about working for the university as kind of opposed to an external job. But that isn't to say that my time at WH Smith wasn't valuable, because I was still gaining a lot of really valuable skills, and you just kind of work outside of maybe your regular hours, or you maybe do a bit more work in the evenings or things like that. It's really important to be organized, so you just kind of work around it.
Fabulous, thank you. And Willow has asked a question for you, Lucy. You said you worked for the uni in the first year. Does the university provide students with the chance to work for the university? I think we've definitely sort of answered some of that, but as that's directed at you, I'll give you a chance just to sort of quickly answer that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I put in for my accommodation, when I found out what accommodation I had gotten, I then got an email saying that was a position that was available within my accommodation, and that if I was interested to put in for it, the type of information that they needed, and I put in for it and I got that position. I was really, really happy with it. And the university, if they have jobs available, will tell you about them. They do want their students to be working for them and to gain the experience that they can give them. So I know we mentioned like the careers and employability, but they will send you emails on the types of jobs they have available and the types of things that might be interested in you. And you can also ask for like a newsletter as well, and they'll put loads of jobs on there, and they're sort of jobs that are specifically things that you are interested in. So they definitely provide a whole range of jobs, and they will make sure that you know about them and exactly what you need to do to be able to like apply for that position.
That's amazing, thank you. So please say hi, please tell us where you're watching from this afternoon. That'd be really helpful. We talked about your first job being in accommodation. So accommodation and moving in, accommodation will definitely be your biggest expense of the university sort of experience. So how do you, when you move in, how do you know that we don't walk into accommodation with sort of 12 toasters? How do you know that you've not got lots of out-of-date milk because there's 12 pints in there? Give us your sort of top tips of how you've sort of worked within your own accommodation. I think, Tallulah, you were in our sort of Lincoln Courts you mentioned the other day. So
yeah,
so you work around that.
Well, I stayed in Courts, which is the university accommodation, and I guess I really made the mistake of overbuying for university. I really felt like I needed like I don't know, 4 of everything, and I really did go overboard, and I really didn't need to, because actually when I arrived at like, I'm from Lincoln, but I wanted to stay in courts just kind of for the experience. But when I arrived, I had so much stuff with me, so I guess one of my biggest top tips is to just wait a little bit. I know it's like super exciting, and when you see all the shops doing like student offers and things like that, it's great and really exciting. But if you just hold off a little bit longer, when you get there, you'll realize that, you know, you might be able to, you know, share the kind of spending with your flatmates, or, you know, you might realize you've overbought and you actually didn't need as much as you thought you needed. So yeah, my I guess one of my top tips would be to just wait until you get to your accommodation. Maybe see if your accommodation provides things, so you might not need to buy a kettle because there might already be one there. Same with toasters and things like that. Find out what's already in your accommodation, and then just hold off a little bit until you actually see what you need kind of when you get there.
That's really good advice. Lucy, have you got any sort of top tips?
So for mine, I actually had a studio in my first year, which is a bit different from obviously sharing with other people. But I think my top tip would probably be the same. I had a whole list of things that I was gonna buy when I got here, and then when I actually got here and went into my accommodation, realized that I didn't need half the things on that list. And there was a lot of stuff that I picked up just because there was a student deal in it that I probably didn't need to, maybe used once or twice, or just never at all. So just concentrate on getting here, and then once you're here, then have a little look for what you need, and what you think you're actually going to use. Even though student deals are absolutely amazing and you will want to get all of them, just think a little bit like, do I actually need that? Am I going to use that? But yeah, the same sort of tips really. You know, if you are going to be sharing with other people, I know that a lot of accommodations do actually set up like chats on Facebook and stuff, so that you can sort of start talking to the people you're going to be living with. I know quite a few of my friends sort of put, oh well, like I actually have a really nice toaster, so I'll bring that, and someone else is like, oh okay, well I have this, so I'll bring this, instead of turning up and having like 12 toasters. So yeah, just hold off a little bit.
Thank you. Just want to say hi to Tammy in South Wales. Nice. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So thinking about, obviously the very obvious thing is, you know, you're living in your accommodation, you've sorted out sort of that you've not got numerous things, but obviously cooking and food shopping. Now, you know, I've seen hundreds of students arrive at the university over the years where they've come in with boxes of food from mum and dad's house and from their home initially. However, the following week, of course, they've got to do their own sort of food shopping. So what are your top tips when you were living in your student accommodation? What sort of things did you find worked well for you, and the most cost effective way to do your shopping, really? I don't mind. Who goes first? Lucy, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I did at first of all, came with a lot of stuff with my mum and dad, especially like big packs of pasta and rice and canned stuff and stuff like that, lots of soup. But when I started having to sort of take control of that myself, one thing I did was, when I'm at home, my mum cooks a lot of stuff, so I asked her for some recipes of stuff that I knew I loved, and sort of just went through that kind of stuff. And I have always bought sort of a two, like I buy my food for like 2 weeks instead of sort of every week, which I found has really, really helped me be able to bring sort of like the money down on what I was spending. And I've done that all my whole 4 years all the way through. But just like another thing, make sure you check what you already have. I know a few times I've sort of like done my shopping really quickly and been like, oh, that's been a little bit expensive, but it's fine because I need that stuff. And then been like, oh, actually now I have like a whole bunch of the same thing. So just, you know, before you shop, take a little inventory of what you already have, and then sort of see what you need. But also have a little look around different shops, because different shops have different deals on different things. They have stuff that's cheaper than other places and stuff like that. And obviously we are quite lucky here to have quite a bit, like a few big supermarkets, also a lot of shops in town as well. And having a little like look for deals can save a lot of money.
You definitely can. Tallulah, have you got any tips for your sort of food shopping?
Yeah, very similar to what Lucy said. And one thing I would say is just kind of buying the least expensive version of something. So, you know, you don't have to get like the popular branded stuff. You can, you know, get the alternatives and it's exactly the same. But sometimes you end up saving. I mean, it might only be 10, 15 pounds, but it starts to add up as you kind of get through the year. So it definitely makes a difference. Buying things in, I don't want to say in bulk, but, you know, maybe go for just, if you eat pasta a lot, then get the big bag of pasta because it works out cheaper, and just little things like that. But yeah, pretty much similar to what Lucy said.
So the killer question that I think people might be sort of watching, thinking, well, how much on average? Lucy, you said you do like a 2 weekly shop. So on average per month, when you're doing your budgeting and sort of these, everybody that's watching that is planning on coming in September and they're sort of trying to work out their sort of their costs, what on average per person do you think you would spend on your food shopping?
I mean, it can definitely vary depending on my plans for the week and what I'm doing, and sort of if you need other bits and bobs like house cleaner and stuff like that. I don't really know what I spend per month, but for about 2 weeks worth of shopping for a really good big shop where I'm sort of out of everything and really need to restock, I probably spend about £40. So that comes out about 20, just over 20 quid a week, which I think is really good. And that's sort of like for you know, a good amount of food. But obviously it can vary depending on what I'm doing. If I know I'm going out a lot one week, I won't spend anywhere near that amount. So I know I don't need to be there. But if I know I'm going to be in all the time, maybe I'll spend a little bit more on like some snacks or something like that. But yeah.
That's a really, but it's a good ballpark figure, isn't it? And I think that's what people watching will sort of want to work out. So that, thank you for that. When you're cooking, obviously you've both been in halls in your first year. Did you collectively cook? Lucy, you mentioned about sort of picking up your mum's recipes. Tallulah, have you got any sort of tips that you did sort of for cooking? Did you cook as a flat or did you cook individually?
So we mostly cooked individually. But one thing we did share is things like bread. Because it's so funny when everyone's buying like a loaf of bread each, you'd be amazed at how quickly it goes off. And I know it sounds, you know, really funny and you wouldn't really think about it. And it's something I never thought about when I was living at home because it just went and I didn't really question it. But things like that where you can't get through it yourself quick enough before like the best before date, we would just, you know, take it in turns buying a loaf of bread or a pint of milk or things like that. So yeah, that worked out really well.
That's actually a good tip, and something that when you're at home, sort of the cupboards are just always full, aren't they, and or empty because you're probably living with a family. So actually when you're living on your own, it is a really good tip. Yeah, probably or put some slices of bread in the freezer or something for the next week probably. So Lucy, you obviously, Tallulah, you're in Lincoln, so travel and sort of train travel was definitely not something that you needed to consider by coming to Lincoln. But Lucy, getting back to Corby in Northamptonshire was probably something that you needed to consider. So have you got tips to how often you used to travel home, how often you do travel home now, and how you did?
Yeah, so my first year I definitely travelled home quite a lot. I think I was one of those people who did kind of miss my family quite a lot. So when I could travel home, if I had some time and some money, I would do that. And I definitely used the trains. I just found that the easiest. I think if anybody is thinking about using trains, my best top tip is they do a 16 to 25 rail card. You can either buy that for a year or 3 years. I bought the 3-year one. I've now bought myself another year one, so I'm here for another year, and I saved so much money. I could not even calculate on that. It might, obviously you're buying it straight off, but I got that money back within the first couple of months of being at university. So I definitely traveled home quite a lot in my first year. A little bit less my second and my third, just because you have more on. I was a little bit more busy. I got used to being at university and away from my family a little bit more, but I still used it quite a lot. So that would be my main top tip.
No, that's great to know, and it's something that you can sort of plan and purchase in advance of coming to university as well, isn't it? So it's one of those things that you can probably sort of purchase during the summer before you get your funding and things like that. As we're talking about planning and things prior to coming, one of the big things that we often see throughout the summer is sort of student bank accounts. Did either of you sort of get your student bank account prior to starting university, or did you do that when you got to university? Tallulah, can you sort of share your experience?
Yeah, so I had my student bank account set up kind of as soon as it was confirmed that I had a place at university and my student finance was sorted. It's one of the things that I wanted to get in place, because you can get quite good cashback rewards and things like that when you're shopping. So essentially what you do is you just click to activate when you're shopping on a certain shop, and it might give you 10% cash back on whatever you spend. So it's it's easy to miss and it's easy to forget about, but it's definitely useful. And another thing is, it was really great to have the security of an overdraft. And on student bank accounts, I don't know if it's exactly the same for all of them. It's worth having a look at. They offer a 0% kind of grace-free period. So that just means that once you've finished your course, and let's say you are in your overdraft for a certain amount of time afterwards, you won't get charged on that overdraft. It sounds like it's not a big deal, but the overdraft charges can be, up to £3 a day. So it's something to think about if you do want the security of having an overdraft, because it is handy, for emergencies and things like that. But also it's good to kind of have that security and knowing that you're not going to be paying all this money back on it after you finished uni, and you kind of get, some time to figure out your finances and start saving and pay it off in a really secure, easy way. So yeah, it's definitely something that I sorted just before university, and it was a good decision, I think.
Fabulous. Lucy, just thinking about sort of bank accounts and shopping. Tallulah sort of alluded to sort of cash back when you shop in. It's my favourite pastime too. But when you are shopping, there's lots of things, aren't there, that you can get discounts while you're shopping once you're a student. So there's lots of top tips. Can you share some of those sort of top tips, those apps that you probably need on your phone, ready to go?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when me and Tallulah talked about this the other day, we both agreed uni days and student beans are definitely lifesavers. They do different sorts of deals on both of them. So Student Deals does deals on a lot of sort of websites and things like that, whereas Uni Days does do that, but also does more like high street brands and stuff like that, so shops you'll be going in. And there's loads and loads of different discounts and stuff that you can get on those. And you just download them from the App Store. You prove to them that you're like a student, and you can just do that with. I think I just used my student ID once I got my student ID and put that through. And they are really, really useful. But also a lot of shops, especially in Lincoln, do student discount because they obviously they know that we're all here. So just worth asking, some of them will have big signs up, some of them won't, but you can get student discount on a whole bunch of different stuff in a load of stores, some stores you wouldn't even really think of. So just having a little look. And I mean, there might be some apps now that maybe me and Tallulah don't know about, sort of thing. It's been a while since we started, so have a little look on the App Store, see what's there. Always check like the reviews and stuff for them, but it's definitely worth having them on your phone ready when you come to university. And I think that's mainly my top tips, but also stuff like Tesco club cards and stuff like that, which maybe like your parents or your family have, but you don't really have yourself. Get one yourself, especially they can really, really help as well, when you're shopping for big shops, or if you're just sort of buying some snacks while you're out or something like that. They can be really, really good.
That's a really good tip, actually. There's lots, as we've sort of mentioned, we've got Morrison's on our doorstep, haven't we, at Lincoln, but there's Tesco's, there's Co-ops, there's Lidl's, there's all sorts of places. So getting those sort of shopping discounts it does add up, doesn't it, when you're sort of looking to save every bit of penny you can. Other things that we talked about earlier was things like if you've got a Spotify premium account, you can get I think it's 50% discount, isn't it, as a student. Other things are Amazon Prime. So definitely, if you're sort of you're like me, it's so easy to spend on Amazon, but especially as you can get things. We've got Amazon boxes obviously on campus, so again Amazon Prime is another thing that you can get and sign up to once you're a student, because you get discount being a student as well, don't you? So they're sort of those hidden sort of gems where you can get real sort of savings. Other incidental costs when you're in some of the things that students often sort of suggest to me is sort of the laundrette. So you've got to wash your clothes and your bedding and all of those things, but actually, how do you sort of consider those sort of costs when you are in student accommodation? Tallulah, have you got any tips as to how you did your washing, really?
So yeah, when I was in course, I did it, on campus, because it's just the easiest way. You don't want to be kind of lugging bags of laundry around because it could be heavy. So what I did was kind of a couple of things. One, any extra change and stuff like that I had. So if I went on a night out, took cash, came back with change, I just put all that change in like a little savings pot. So that could go towards random things like if I needed to nip out and get something, or if I needed to do laundry, things like that. But also I just kind of accounted for it in my monthly budgeting and really did, it's not like I wore the same clothes again and again, but I did try to make sure that I wasn't overwashing anything, and tried to save a little bit that way. But it is something you have to do. There's no way around it. So you just have to account for that in your budgeting and things like that. When I was buying clothes also, I made sure that I could wash it myself, and it wasn't something really pricey that was dry clean only, because again it's just an extra cost. So definitely when I shopped, I thought about that.
That's a really good tip, actually, and one that you don't always think about until you're not doing the washing. Willow has asked a question. Is there any apps out there that would help with your budgeting? I don't know if either of you have got any. That's a really good question, actually. I don't know if either of you have got any tips on that one.
I found that a lot of the budgeting apps you do have to pay for. That's just what I found from my experience. What I actually do now is in the notes section of my phone, I just have like a little table of my kind of ingoings and outgoings. So any direct debits and things that I have like the date, what it is, how much, just so I'm aware at any point in the month what's left to pay. And then just keeping note of what I spend and things like that. And you can do it on spreadsheets as well. There's loads of really good YouTube tutorials on how to create, a nice budgeting spreadsheet, which is free, rather than kind of paying for an app. But yeah, I'm not sure. That's just kind of what I've experienced.
Lucy, have you found any free apps?
I haven't, no, but I just went into Wilkinson's and bought myself a really cheap budget book for the year, and that's what I've done ever since, really. So it's sort of a similar thing to Tallulah, but I just prefer having a proper book. Sort of, that's just kind of what I'm like normally. I like writing stuff down. So I just did that, really, and I found that really, really helpful, especially, like Tallulah said, if you've got something going out of your bank account monthly, making sure that you have that there, so sort of like how much money you're going to have at like each week of the month can be really, really helpful. But unfortunately, all the apps that I found as well when I was first looking, even if they were free, it'd be like free for a month and then you'd have to pay for them, and I was not budgeting for a budgeting app. So if that is something that you want to do, one of those options would be great. Like Tallulah said, there are really great tutorials out there on how to make spreadsheets. So, if that's something that you think would be helpful, I'd just say go for that.
I think it's any budding computer scientists out there. I think there's a niche there ready for you to create an app, I think, for all students. I think there's definitely something there for people to probably create, because I think it is a great idea. It's a really good question, actually. You've talked about, obviously, Tallulah, obviously because your computing is your background, you clearly... it sort of just shows the difference with the pair of you, really. But one of the things you talked about the other day was the fact that lots of people, you sort of in year 13, you may have had a laptop from sort of your GCSE years. Do you have to buy a laptop? If you buy a laptop, what about the software package? What package do you need to have? If you're doing a computer science program, that might be one thing. If you're doing a media program, you might have to have a different sort of app. Can you give us any tips and advice and your sort of experience, I guess, on that, so that we know we're saving money?
Yeah, definitely. It can be so easy to get roped into buying really expensive equipment and software when you go to university, and especially kind of like I was saying before, there's a lot of student offers that you'll see advertised all over before you start. But one thing I would recommend is, again, just waiting until you come to university, because I know, especially for computer science, the facilities are incredible, and like the computer labs are 24/7 access. So even if you're thinking, oh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I have to do my assignment for tomorrow, which you won't, but you might, they're still open. Like you can have access to that equipment and the software on there. Also, sometimes if you're buying a laptop, for example, before you go to university, they'll offer you a Microsoft package to go with it, or you'll end up spending extra on that. But you get that free as a student, so you could save money, not buying these extra add-ons and extra software, because it can get really expensive, especially if you're doing anything creative with Adobe and things like that, it can really, you know, take a lot of your budget before you even get to uni. So it's worth just waiting, seeing what is available at the university, and then, you know, if by a chance they don't have what you need, then you can get that. But I've never had a problem with, you know, getting software and things like that from the university. So it's definitely worth holding off and just checking when you get there.
Thank you for that. That's really handy to know. Lucy, on the flip side, right, instead of like nipping to Wilkinson's with your book, thinking about sort of textbooks. Obviously, we have an amazing library with all sorts of journals, online materials, physical books, but there's always physical books that you probably need to purchase as sort of core text, really. Are there any sort of tips and advice, again, where you have purchased a book or have found another way of sort of secondhand sort of text?
Yeah, so I mean, whenever I'm looking for a book, I always check the library first. But the library actually are linked to loads of other sort of like organizations and institutions that you can access stuff like that through you being like a University of Lincoln student. So I always check for that as well. But there have been times, you know, I'm especially doing science, where you do have to buy textbooks, and you really do need to buy them. That, you know, they are important. And I have bought the majority of mine secondhand. So I was lucky enough that quite a lot of the students when I was starting that were leaving were selling a lot of their books that they'd used over their degrees. So me and the majority of my friends sort of bought them secondhand from them. But also just having a little look online for the book that you want secondhand. You know, there are some online stores that's what they do. They get secondhand textbooks, and they then sell them on. So just making sure that, you know, you're having a little look at all of those before you sort of go and buy the textbooks, because they can be really expensive. But I think I think there's only one that I ever had to buy at sort of full price. And it just because it just wasn't out in anywhere else. But all my other textbooks, and I have many textbooks, have all been either secondhand, or I've managed to get hold of them through being a student with the university, because it's something that they are like with through an organization. Or you know, a lot of journals in science, we are lucky enough that the library do actually pay for a lot of journals, so you can get them, like, access to them, which really saves on money. So always double check. That would be my top tip for textbooks, is always look everywhere else before you say, okay, I'm going to buy it at full price.
Thank you. That's a really good top tip. And I think the takeaway that I'm getting from this conversation with you both is actually get your cash over the summer, hang on to it so you've got some money in your new student bank account, ready for your Freshers Week, not to sort of purchase anything until you get to university, and then just wait. And I would be exactly the same. The excitement of wanting to get everything is sort of, patience is probably your first thing before you budget, really. So sort of hold back and then purchase once you're there, and then you'll sort of. And they're really, really good tips, I think, really good tips for secondhand books. You know, hard copy of books that have probably only been used by a previous student is a massive tip, isn't it, I think, and can save literally hundreds and hundreds of pounds. We've got a question, just time for one more question, I think, about some stores nearby the uni to buy essential and groceries. But must be budget friendly. So really good question. So have you got any sort of tips in and around? And that is one of the beauty of Lincoln, really, that every shop that we will sort of talk about is within walking distance. So, you know, we are very close to the city centre. So Tallulah, have you got any tips for sort of your essential grocery shops that are budget friendly?
Yeah, I think Morrison's is so close, so I think for food and things like that, it's a really great place to go and do food shopping. For any kind of household cleaning, extra things like that, there's Poundland and Wilko's. They're all just so close, which, like you said, is just one of the nice things about Lincoln. Everything's really close. So even if you go to one shop and they don't have it, it's not a big deal to walk to the next one. So yeah, I think, food shops, Morrison's, and, Aldi, and then anything else, Poundland, Wilko's.
Lucy, any other additions to that?
Yeah, I mean, for food shops, I know one thing that I definitely do is we do have an Iceland, like literally right in the middle of town. And I remember the first time I ever went in there, it absolutely blew my mind how cheap some of the stuff is and the stuff that they do. Because before coming to university, I just thought that they sold like frozen food, whereas actually they sell a whole range of different stuff. And yeah, it's literally, you can pop into it on your way out of university before you go home. It is so close. So if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit more budgeted, then I think that yeah, Iceland is great. But also Poundland and Wilkinson's, and I'm sure there's probably lots of others that you can go and have a little look at. But like I said before, we do have like a little Tesco and stuff, and when you have the club card and stuff like that can really help if you just want to pick up like little bits and bobs, especially like sort of like essential stuff. But yeah, same sort of thing as Tallulah, really.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of call it there, and thank you so much for all of your sort of top tips. Lots and lots of top tips, and I'm sure we could go on all night with all sorts of top tips. We were talking earlier about limitless watching at the Odeon. The Odeon is literally over the way and on campus, so a whole host of different things. Next week, we have another live lounge about student accommodation at Lincoln. So next Tuesday, we have 4 o'clock, again, 4 till 5. We have Harriet and Vicky, I think, joining us next week to have a bit of a showcase of our accommodation and really sort of break down all of those things that you will need to actually pack to come to Lincoln, to our student accommodation. So it'll be really helpful to have a little guided tour of our student accommodation. One of the top tips that Olivia has been sort of putting on as a banner is the 50 student money saving tips. Have a look through that. It is on the Money Saving Expert website, and there are 50 top tips there, ranging on lots of things that we've talked about. So ranging from sort of the best student bank account through to the best app. And actually, if you have a look and go through those one by one, you will set yourself up really ready for September and welcome week when you move into the university. So thank you so much to Tallulah and Lucy. I can't thank you enough for all of your sort of top tips. And good luck everybody with your student finance application. Remember, it's open. Submit your application by the 20th of May to ensure that your funds are in place for enrolment. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much.